Welcome to the Color of Influence podcast, where you will hear conversations from influential people of color from around the world, from social media, and right here in your communities. These behind-the-scenes conversations will motivate you, inspire you, and encourage you. I am your host, Aisha Morgan, and let's meet today's guest. Today on the podcast, I will be talking to Coach Cam, who is a former U of H alumni and student athlete. Coach Cam played football at U of H while I was running track, but now he is diving into the world of politics. He is the Democratic candidate for state representative of District 132 in Katy and Cypress, Texas. We are going to talk about the importance of local elections. We focus so much on our presidential elections and our governor's races, but our local elections are just as important. So we need to go out there and flex our right to vote. All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. We have a very special guest, one of my fellow U of H alumni, Campbell. He is here to talk to us about local elections. He is running for office, and I'm going to let him introduce himself, tell us all about it, and then we're going to really talk about why it's so important to vote in these local elections. And, talk about his stance on, kind of what he's running on as far as politics, and then go from there. So Cameron, go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll get started.
All right. So good evening. My name is Coach Cam. I'm your Democratic candidate for state representative in House District 132. That's here in Katy and Cypress. Those are the two furthest west suburbs of Houston, nestled right here in Harris County.
And in that position, what will you be doing? Because I think that that's one of the biggest things as someone who's not into politics. We see the signs on the streets. We hear people talk about it here and there. We see stuff on social media, but we don't know what the local elected officials always do. So what are you going to be responsible for when you win?
Yeah, so when I win, that's right. Talk that cougar talk. So the shortest thing I say is get our state back on track, right? So what I would say to folks who are new to the political space, and I'm relatively new myself. We can kind of talk about my journey, how I got here, but the lower down the ballot the election is, the closer it impacts you.
Okay.
Right. And so when you think about the bottom of the ballot, all those judicial candidates and those judges, those are the people you see time in and time out. Right. And so the role of state representative ultimately is to represent their constituency in Austin. And a part of that role is creating laws and policies that are in the best interest of their district as well as the state, but also, advocating for, dollars to be spent and where dollars should be spent that's in the best interest of everybody, not just a select few.
Okay. See, now I had no idea, what, I'm I don't know, do y'all talk about roads or something? I had no clue, what, a state representative did. Because we always hear about, senators and the mayor. A lot of people do now, I feel know about the judges and stuff just because of what happened with George Floyd and some of the cases that came before him where the officers were, not given even sentence at all, no charges. So we kind of learn what the prosecutors do and all that stuff. But tell me and my audience how you got started in politics, because you were not a politician when we met.
That's right.
Years
ago. That's so crazy. It is so crazy. Number one, how many times our paths have crossed.
Yes.
And it's just so in hindsight, it's if you look back at our time at U of H, you can kind of see it. It's I played football. I did the student athlete advisory thing. I did the student alumni organization. So I was always active in stuff outside of just athletics. But for me, last year, I was sitting on so first off, after President Biden was elected, if you remember, as a country, it just kind of felt like we had an upset stomach. things just felt like really unsettled. And so
Yeah.
I've always been kind of a history nerd. And so I had Benjamin Franklin's biography as a book I've always wanted to read. And I kind of like
Hmm.
had it kind of like in case of emergency, kind of like, like a treat to myself.
Yeah.
And so I was reading Benjamin Franklin's biography on my couch, and I was reading on my phone, and I put my phone down and looked up at the TV, and these crazy folks were attacking the Capitol. And so
Hmm.
so I went from feeling like extremely patriotic and we're like a young democracy and we're gonna figure this out to like there's no way that federal, state, or local leadership is effective right now for this to happen.
Yeah.
And so, and I know you're from the East because you're from Jersey, right?
Right.
I got the
Yep.
weirdest. I'm telling you, like I got one of those memories, man. So I was an athlete that read every sports like SID book. Like I know,
Hmm.
like where everybody's from, I was one of those guys.
Yeah.
So the same way that I would say, like for you and your family, respectfully, like the way that you felt during 9/11, how it just like struck in a very different way.
Yeah.
That's how the Capitol attacks felt for me. And so I called the party, and they asked me to run. Like, hey, would you consider running? And I was like, yeah. So I kind of mapped out like really effective leaders, and I looked for like weak, inexperienced, invisible representation,
Hmm.
and I found state representative at House District 132. And you know me, I'm a dog. So I was like, oh, I could beat that guy.
Yeah.
so so I set my eyes on it. I was like, yeah, I'm about to dog walk this dude. And that's kind of what got me here.
Now, when you say you called the party, like, what does that mean? Who did you call?
So I called like the DNC, the Democratic National Party, like in DC. This is like
Oh,
so
okay.
January 6th happened, like January 8th. I called like and they were like, yeah, like call TDP, Texas Democratic Party. So I called Texas Democratic Party. They were like, yeah, call Harris County Democratic Party. They kind of like sent me like down the filter. And
Yeah.
so I ended up talking to somebody here locally, and they were like, well, we've got, like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I'll door knock, I'll call. Like I had no intention of, I had zero intention of running. I was just like, I'll knock doors a couple hours a week, or like I'll write letters, like whatever I can do to kind of help this get back on track.
Right.
And they were like, well, would you run? And I was like, I mean, I never thought about it, but yeah, right, like I would. And so kind of going back to like our time at U of H, I actually was a poli-sci major my freshman year. Um, do you remember so Gina talked me out of being a
Yeah.
poli-sci major. She was like, are you going to go to law school? And I was like, well, no. She was like, you may want to figure out something else to kind of major in. And so it is funny like how this thing kind of ended up coming like all the way full circle.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So from there, what do you do? Like, do you have to fill out like a form to run? Do you have to get votes? Like, do you have to get petitions? Like, how do you just get on the ballot?
So the first thing is, I think that the gift that our previous president gave us was he lowered the standard to serve as a politician, right?
Mm.
Like even like calling myself, like me, like I'm not a politician. You know what I mean? I'm
Right.
just like a community servant, and so there's two ways essentially to get started. So there is like a little bit of paperwork, and then you can either uh, you can either pay a filing fee, which depending on what race depends on the cost of the filing fee,
Hmm.
or you can do like a signature petition. And again, depending on the race, depends on how many signatures you need. And so I think
Okay.
the signature petition for this race was either 750 signatures or 1250 or something like that. And
Yeah.
so it's one of those things where it's like uh, democracy works, right? So the whole thing with this entire process, the one thing it's shown me is if you are able to galvanize the people, that means you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
And so 75, or 1,250 signatures or 750, like that sounds like a lot. But if you think about it, like if you go to church and collect 200, stand outside of a football game and collect, right? So it's just like,
Right. Yeah.
so the whole test is like, are you willing to put your name out there to say, like, there are people in my community who either at least know me, who see me around, but like I am of the people. And it's one of those tests where like, yeah, it's kind of uncomfortable, but I mean, so is being an athlete.
Right. Yeah. So once had everything in place, how do you start campaigning? Like, we know there's a primary. So who kind of guided you through how to campaign?
Yeah. So, so what I'd say to that is like being a coach and an athlete and an entrepreneur really, really, really cut a lot of the learning curve down for me. So the first thing you learn as an entrepreneur is the first, um, the first wave of people to come at you. Typically, you don't even waste your money with. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Right.
whether they're consultants or lawyers or whatever else. It's like those are the people who, like no disrespect, but it's like there are some things you have to learn by trial. So the first thing I knew was, hold on to my money and
Yeah.
like learn as much as I can. And so the one really dope thing about the Democratic Party is there are so many learning resources that are like no cost or close to
Yeah.
no cost. So the
Okay.
first one that I used was the NDTC, the National Democratic Training Committee. It's literally like, just imagine like Wikipedia for politics all put together on a website. And so there's like virtual learning, there's webinars, there's podcasts, there's like worksheets. So that was the first place I started. The second place I started was a group called Arena, and they focus on candidates of color who, again, are just looking to kind of get started to kind of learn what's what. Then the last one is a group called Run for Something that does like fantastic work, and they focus just exclusively on candidates of color. And so, the first thing I say is like learn, right? So again, it goes back to being an athlete. Learn, observe, execute. And I think like that's kind of what the order of it is. And so, I think a lot of people try to go into the execute first, and you just end up kind of, setting yourself back a couple of months. And so that's kind of how I got started. And yeah, I mean, there are a ton of resources that are close to no cost, or most of them are no cost, just to kind of help you figure out what you should be running for, what you should be doing with your time, and stuff like that.
Okay. Now, were there any requirements? I know you said that the former president lowered the bar. So were there requirements? Did you have to have a degree? Did you have to, I don't know, have any certificates or anything?
Just it's got to be a citizen.
Okay.
You have to be a citizen, and I think you had to live in district like 6 months or 18 months. I mean, it's,
Oh, okay.
like a really easy bar to check, right? It may have
Yeah.
been 6 months, but yeah. So I mean, again, depending on the race, depending on what you're running for, it does depend, right? So like, if you're running for a judge, obviously you have to be a lawyer. If you're running for, um, certain, I think that's maybe the most restrictive one locally is you do have to be a lawyer to be a judge.
Okay.
But other than that, it's mostly just kind of age and citizenship. But even with this position, there's no age requirement on
Okay. So you geared up for the primary because that's over.
it. Mm-hmm.
And so how did you prepare? And then, well, we know the outcome, but just tell us the outcome.
Okay, so the first thing I'll say is historically, Black and brown campaigns are historically underfunded. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing, right? So the first thing I would say is to get into the space, I've kind of explained what that pathway looks like. The first bubble that I want to pop is do not think for a moment that as soon as you put your name on the line, people are going to like throw money at you, and it's just like this roller coaster. It's like, no, it's literally starting a small business in a microwave. And so having been an entrepreneur without any traditional institutional lending, I know what it's like to work in lean startup mode and to put your own cash up, to get as much volunteer work and labor out of folks as possible. And I think creative value, I think that's the most important thing. So the way that I designed my campaign was very similar to the way that I was coached, but the way I operate my business. So we have what we call power teams, right? And so our campaign is 100% grassroots. We have 100%, volunteers on our team. And the way that we have our power teams designed, we have marketing and communications, which is called Marcoms, macro finance, microfinance, policy, intel and data, strategy, field, and policy. I think I may have said policy twice. But yeah, so as we onboard, and events and programming. So as we onboard volunteers, it's like, hey, what are you good at, right? So for example, if you think about like the church, the moment that you ask somebody who wants to be an usher to sing in a choir, like you lost that volunteer. Like, no,
Right.
I don't want to sing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what really works for our campaign is like, hey, whatever your skill set, do you like writing emails? Then join our micro team for copywriting. Do you enjoy putting on events? So join our event group. Do you enjoy creating or writing policy or like strategy? To help with this team. And so, really taking it that way and kind of breaking the old kind of almost like rugged model, like it has to look like this. It's like,
Yeah.
no, at the end of the day, you need to make sure that all the boxes are getting checked. And um, so we have, I think, 61 volunteers right now. I think we ballooned up to like maybe 70 at any one point, and they're from all over the country, like all over the country. And so I think the coolest thing about campaigning now is that there are very few positions where you have to physically be in the same city or town, right? So I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
outside of knocking doors, everything can be done, remotely.
Right. Yeah. That's great. So once you won the primary, then what's your next step? Because clearly enough people voted for you to be on the ballot next month. So then what happens?
So the way I won my primary was using that power team strategy, and we only raised $1,400. I mean, the guy that my primary opponent, ton of respect for him, no love, no love lost. What I say is, the difference of what a lot of people understand that you and I understand as athletes is the guy that I ran in my primary was
Mm-hmm.
my competitor. The guy that I'm about to be now is my opponent. And while they sound the same, they're two
Right.
different things, right?
Yeah,
So like I beat you, but we're still on the same team.
exactly.
And so the guy that I'm gonna beat, like I guess I'm coming for blood on that one. So once we won the primary, then really, the the next few months was just fundraising, what they call time, right? So you're,
Mm-hmm.
calling folks, calling your network. I think you and I spoke once or twice, just like
Yeah.
saying like, hey, this is what I'm running. Can you pitch in? Whatever either dollars you have, attention you have, can you repost? Just trying to create awareness because I mean it does require quite a bit of capital. Now, one thing I
Yeah.
will say is a lot of folks like, well, where does the money go to? And it's like, well, think about it this way: if I'm selling, some AirPods, if I'm selling AirPods, this is a product. So
Mm-hmm.
as a campaign, I'm the product. The only way that folks know about these AirPods is you have to create awareness,
Right.
whether it's ads, whether it's TV time, whether it's events, whether it's meet and greets, like all those things like cost dollars. And so, it's a pretty expensive thing to be able to do. Um, as a word of caution, like I put, significant amount of my own capital in.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing I would say is, if you're thinking about going this route, understand what your threshold is. Like this is how much I can invest in my own money. This is how much I think we need to be successful. And this is a fluid number, right? And
Right.
so, you know, I would deeply urge. I've seen a lot of folks like, please do not go in debt
Yeah.
running for office. There are a lot of folks who do, and it's like, yeah, that's like that person may not run again because that experience was so bitter for them. But yeah, I mean, it's a grind. I mean, I think that every life skill that we picked up at U of H, I apply here every single day. It's just to keep calling, keep going, keep going. Like that's why we're the school of champions.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I know you've had like a couple fundraisers. So just kind of talk to us about what some of those look like. Like, what did you do to fundraise? What were some of your events?
So the biggest thing and why I'm so confident that we're going to be successful is the makeup of our district. So
Mm-hmm.
Katy and Cypress have 3 of the 10 fastest growing zip codes in the entire country, right? And 89% of that growth is black and brown.
Right.
And people are moving from the Bay Area, New York, LA, Boston, Philly, Chicago, all progressive places.
Right.
So, for me, I understood that I am the target voter that I have to go get. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
before this, like I said, like I voted, but I wasn't overly active. I didn't listen to political podcasts. I mean,
Right.
I was just kind of a regular citizen. So, where I think that where we chose to zig, where most people zag, it's like, we had the Cigars and Super Bowl ring event, and Antoine came out, and some other Texans came out. We've got we got trap karaoke this Saturday.
I
right?
just
So like,
saw that on
you know what
Facebook.
I'm saying? Exactly. So it's like the idea is not to get strategically, right? The idea is not to attract the same Democrats that you know are already going, they're already voting for you. You've
Right.
got to expand your electorate and you've got to find a middle ground. I think that the biggest thing that a lot of respectfully campaigns do wrong is like they only focus on events and programming that other politicals would go to instead of
Right.
saying, let's cross over. Like, you know, in the middle of having our trap karaoke, we're going to have a 2 or 3 minute conversation. Like, look, go vote, go vote. Excuse me, make sure you have your voter registration card, go vote early. Now back to the party. And
Yeah.
so it's like, yeah, getting folks who typically don't vote engaged. I mean, that was President Obama's blueprint. And the last thing I say is, um, being a history guy, um, you know, like study the greats. Like do your research, study the greats. Like trying to reinvent the wheel is a waste of time. And so understand the best practices of different electives, different campaigns, different candidates, and take from each one what works best for you.
Yeah. Which does make sense. And like a lot of the places that you've gone to, um, locally, some of them like I had never heard of. So it even like expands like our view of like what's in our area. To be like, oh, okay. And then you see the pictures and it's like, oh, that looks nice. And so even with that, like it's still bringing awareness to you, but also to like our local area. Um, because the place for the trap karaoke, never even heard of it. Never even knew there was something back that far.
Right.
So
Black owned, by the way. Black owned, by
yeah,
the way.
see, I would have never known. And like we've gone to like Katie Vibes and like places that are more I guess like bigger as
Mm-hmm.
far as like where it's at, like the visibility. So Katie Vibes, I mean, you're gonna pass it every day if
Right.
you are on I-10 right there. But um, so yeah, like I'm learning something new just from that, one event. Um, so once you win, what will your position look like? So like what will you be doing? Is it a position where that will be your job, or is it like something that you'll be doing with your actual job?
So once we win, that champagne about to be crazy. Like, I'm just telling you, like, we are about to go up. We are about to go up. But so the position of state representative in Texas is very unique. So it actually the this, the legislative sessions only occur every other year for 6 months.
Okay.
Right. So starting in January, that session goes until I guess May or June.
Mm-hmm.
Then that session closes. Now there's always special hearings and like like as the job as a state representative does require you to be in Austin quite a bit. But essentially, it would look like me being in Austin from January till June, Monday through Friday, then coming home, to my family and stuff for the weekend. I think the other thing that's really important in this role, and again, another reason why I feel really good about our chances is,
Mm-hmm.
the idea of earning enough votes to be elected to represent somebody, but then not going back to say, hey, this is what happened in session this week, or I voted no on this bill, and this is why, right? And so I
Yeah.
think that the person who's currently in place, but a very common theme is for folks to get elected and then like not come back around until it's election time. It's like, remember me? Like, come vote. And it's like, well, no, I mean, and this is an athlete. Like sometimes, this is a coach. You've got to be able to say, like, hey, I called this play and it didn't work and
Yeah.
guys didn't work, but I'm gonna get back right back to it, right? And I think that's a big part that you can't shortcut advocating for all of your constituents. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whether you have a D next to your name, an R next to your name, independent, like Green Party, whatever, if when we're elected, it's our job to advocate for every single person. I think that also makes for me at least, that's a big responsibility. And it's like, yeah, I'd much rather come back to have our monthly, like town hall to say, like, this is why I voted for this. This is why I voted against this. Even if, because you know how it is, like what a citizen may see on the other side of the curtain may be like 1 through 5. You may see 1 through 30. And so it's like, yeah, like there's some stuff here that you don't quite understand. This is why. And so,
Right.
yeah, so to me, it's working in Austin, Monday through Friday, coming home to spend time with family, but then also just being in the community.
Yeah. Now, do you get paid?
Kinda.
Okay.
So I'll let you guess. I'll let you take a wild guess how much the pay is for this job. I just
Mm,
throw a number out.
when you say kinda, I'm gonna go with like a teacher salary and say like 50,000.
$7,200 a year.
No.
Right?
Wow.
So it ain't about the money.
No, it is not.
It's not about the money. This is one of the things that again makes Texas unique. And if you think about it as a person of color, as a black person, it is the critique on it is it's a barrier of entry, right? So you have to be a lawyer, a consultant, well off, wealthy to be able to
Mm-hmm.
leave your job for 6 months and still be okay and then
Right.
go do this work. So you think about like the teacher who's teaching third grade who like really wants to run. I mean, how do
Right.
you
She can't
you
leave
really
that.
can't.
Mm-hmm.
You really can't. And so it is a barrier of entry. Um, like it is what it is. I have seen in the past a push for it to become a full-time thing, which does kind of lower the bar, not to make it easier to run, but more sustainable to run.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, that is one of the challenges, one of the drawbacks. Is like, yeah, you're not getting rich doing this. But the other thing is like, nor should you, right? So it's like it is a public servant job. So it's almost like sitting
Right.
on a school board. Like that's a pretty like unsexy thing to do. It's important, but it is about the service.
Yeah. Wow. Like I had no idea. I mean, I mean, you kind of think about like, we equate everything to what we see on TV. So
Mhm.
you believe these people who are like city council members and, whatever as far as like their characters. And that's what they do. Like they don't have another job other than like being a politician.
Right,
Um, but on the flip side, a lot of them are crooked in movies and TV shows. And it's
right.
probably because they can't afford it because they don't get paid anything. Not that you are going to be crooked, but
Well, to the crooked point, this is what I can say. I feel like having been this far in my run,
mm-hmm.
I see how and where people go off, right? So the first thing here is like, you're going to end up being corrupt. Just don't turn corrupt. Everybody does. And it's like, well, and this is an adult audience, I'm
Yes,
guessing.
yes.
Okay. All right. So one of the, just checking, one of the things that was told to me was like, watch out for the political groupies. And I'm like, I played ball. Like, we
Yeah.
had groupies. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think I'll be okay in this
Yeah.
space. You know what I mean? And so, um, the the there's kind of three buckets that I see that people run for:
Mm-hmm.
either power, ego, or like we can change something. And you
Right.
think about like again, you think about the Obama, you think about the Pete Buttigieg, you think about like the folks. Um, like if you go do your history on Sylvester Turner, like Sylvester Turner is a goat. Like that man has done so much amazing work. Rodney Ellis does so much amazing work. And it's like if you go back and read the old interviews, again, I'm a history nerd, right? So I was kind of
Yeah.
like reading up on guys. And it's like, yeah, like they were naive enough to think that they could move the needle like an inch. And it's like, I think those are the folks who you find. Again, nobody's perfect. It's not about, it's not about that, but it's like this person's heart is in the right place.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, you do see where it's like, oh, your dad groomed you to be this, or this is the next notch on your belt, and it's like, can you do the job effectively? Maybe, but like this is just like ball. This is a character revealing space,
Yeah.
and I think that the more you spend time with folks, you can kind of understand what people's intentions are.
Yeah. I can understand that. And I can definitely see that because you have, like you're saying, you have to raise money. And a lot of times, like, that's where it gets muddled. Like, I'm going to give you something, but you have to give me something back in return. Um, so yeah, just having those good core values is important. Um, so once you win, how long do you hold office before another election comes up?
So it's a 2-year term.
Okay.
So you spend 6 months in office and 18 months running. So you're like always running. You're
Got
always
it.
running. So like for me and my family, so when we decided to run, when I decided to run, we had read Michelle Obama's book already. We
Okay.
had gone to the Becoming tour. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we had just started to read President Obama's book together. And the biggest thing that the takeaway from those books, so those learning opportunities was you've really got to navigate the family thing,
Yeah.
right? Like, so like for my wife, she was like, I just prefer to stay like, she works in the community. Like, I prefer to stay out of it. Um, we don't, I don't really bring the kids around much. I mean, if I do, it's like take the kid,
Right.
like take the kid to an event. Um, for me, I've gotten 3 death threats already.
What?
Um, yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Like
Wow.
they big nervous. They big nervous. The toughest one was uh so two tough run-ins. The first one was at the HEB at I-10 in Pin Oak. You can appreciate this. So fighting on this KD book ban with KDISD.
Yeah.
I leave the school board meeting and go to HEB or get some guac. They guac
Mm-hmm.
hit. Um, and this guy's like, "Hey, I heard you're that, what do you call me? Queer vegetarian." I was like, "Queer vegetarian?" Like, what? He's like, "Yeah, you fighting for them gay kids and them books, and
Oh my
we saw you
gosh.
at a restaurant and you just had no meat on your plate." And I was like, "Well, I mean, calling me." Oh, sorry about that. So he calls me this queer vegetarian, and I said, "Well, calling me a vegetarian is more offensive to me than calling me queer. Like that doesn't like it doesn't bother me, right?" And so
Right.
about 3 weeks later, we're having dinner with the family, and I get this call, and he's like, "I see you with the kids and your wife. You have 10 minutes. We're gonna kill you." Da, 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 da. And my wife was like, "Yeah, like keep
Wow.
us out of it." You know what I'm saying? Like 1,000% out. Like I think that just that was all through March. That was all in the primary.
Yeah.
Um, I think for her, like her takeaway was the resiliency that Michelle Obama writes about. You
Mm-hmm.
can't actually appreciate it. And even that was a snippet compared to like their run in '06,
Right.
'07, '08, right? And so it's like, you know, the flowers that she gets, Michelle Obama, she earns each and every one of them,
Yeah.
you know?
That's crazy. And I mean, it's a local election, so I'm guessing that maybe after this, you're not gonna try to move up and go for a higher seat in a different.
Me,
Yeah, you.
me,
Yeah,
me, me.
you.
We are 22 days away from victory right now. My eyes are 1,000% on this prize.
Yeah.
I'm working to be the next state rep in 132. I think that I don't plan on being a politician, like a lifelong politician. I think that, we talked about like 10 years of service,
Okay.
wherever that takes us, wherever, you know what I mean? But it's like,
Yeah.
I don't, my vision is to get Texas back on track and move it back out of the way. Now, I will say this: I have two. And this is before I chose to run. I've got two really audacious goals that I want to check off. The first one is I want to fix middle school athletics in Texas. Right. So
Yeah.
right now, you like to say we're producing the best athletes, but we're not. Right. Like
Yeah.
Florida produces better athletes. And I think that we do youth sports better than any state. I think that we do high school
High
sports
school. Yeah.
better than any, but that middle school space,
Mm-hmm.
we lose a lot of kids in that window, and we don't develop. And so like you can drive by Cinco Ranch, whatever high school, Siena, it doesn't matter. If you drive by a middle school during athletics, it looks like a prison jail hour. Like it's too many kids per
Yeah.
coach, and it's like there's no way instruction is happening. And so, the first thing I want to fix excuse me, is middle school athletics in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing I want to fix, I want to be a part of establishing an Ivy League for HBCUs.
Oh,
Right.
I
And
like
so,
that.
and again, this is as like we went to PWIs, right? So it's
Right.
like, so thinking about, yeah. So, if you think about it, you've got, Brown, Harvard, Yale, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And, those are extremely rigorous academic schools for sure. But you
Right.
think about like Xavier in New Orleans,
Mm-hmm.
Morehouse, Spelman, they're like so many world class HBCUs
Right.
that, the average person who gets into, like Cal can't get into Morehouse.
Right.
And so it's like, I would love to be a part of, the beginning of a equivalent. Obviously, it wouldn't be like the Ivy, it'd be called something else. But
Right.
like the Ivy League of like actually establishing this is the upper crest of
Mm-hmm.
HBCUs. So that's the other cool thing I wanna be a part of before like that's on my bucket list.
Yeah. And it's funny because I kind of thought there was a tier, but maybe it's more of a popularity tier and not a academic tier.
Yeah,
Because obviously we didn't go to a HBCU, but like you always hear about Hampton and Morehouse and Xavier. But then there's like, just on social media, you realize like there's so many that you've never even heard of. Um, I mean, obviously for us, we know about TSU, we know about Prairie View, but
right.
for me, like living in New Jersey, there's one called Lincoln. It's either in, I think it's in Pennsylvania or Delaware or somewhere. But it's not that far from me, but I never even heard of it.
Never heard of it.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's, I thought it was more of like a popularity tier, but I do think that that would be a pretty cool, thing to like
Yeah.
get into.
Yeah. And just establish like this is the bar, right? So like, there's nothing wrong with saying like, like Hampton. Like that's it.
Right.
I'll settle on U of H, I'll settle on A&M, UT, but like that's my goal. And having it validated with this is what the academic rigor there, like this is, it's equivalent to a Brown or MIT, you know what I'm saying, or whatever
Yeah.
else. So yeah, that's I want to be a part of building that.
Yeah. My cousin's husband went from Cornell to Hampton. Like he transferred. Um,
Yeah,
and it was just as much work. So
exactly.
definitely, it's not like a community college.
Right.
And I think that that would be good too, because a lot of times, like even like, we have like Division 2 and Division 3 schools and all that kind of stuff, and you don't really hear about a lot of them. Um, but I think for the HBCUs that would be good because it gives like more visibility to, I mean, there could be a school that we don't know about that's a HBCU that has like a really vigorous program. Um, but you just, it's not as popular. But academically it may be just as hard.
Well, one thing you just said, and my vision for House District 132, and I went to school here. Like my high school is in my district. I went to South Springs High School, and
Okay.
so it's like my vision for Katy and Cypress is ambitious, but I think that if you instead of viewing Katy as Katy and Cypress as Cypress, if it's actually 132,
One, yeah.
like it can be the Fort Worth for Houston, right? So like
Yeah.
by population, Katy is the same size as Pittsburgh. Like so a
Really?
lot of people don't realize how yeah, so the population of Katy and like like Katy proper, like the
Right,
surrounding
yeah.
Katy, 300,000, north of 300,000 people.
I had
If
no
you put
idea.
well, you think about the traffic out, I mean, it makes
Well,
once you hear it, it makes sense, right? And
yeah.
so you think about putting Katy and Cypress together. Now you're talking about the population of Miami.
Mm,
And so it's like instead of it being, and again, I grew up in Cyprus. Like people who live in Cyprus don't go to Katy, people who go to Katy don't go to Cyprus. But it's like if we were to put it together, why don't we have a concert hall out here? Why don't we
right.
have museum district? Why haven't we attracted another? So we have U of H, we have Lone Star, we have HCC. Why haven't we attracted a satellite location for Texas Tech or A&M or UT? Minor league sports teams, Division 1, 2, and 3 championships, right? And it's because, respectfully, we've been playing small ball. As I love where I live. I grew up here, but it's like, no, if we take a step back, and speaking to the economic development community in both Katy and Cypress, we can sustain it. We don't have a luxury hotel. We just got suburban, Hilton regular, extended stays, and place for AAU baseball. And, what I mean? So nice, cool, but it's why do I have to drive 35 miles to go have a $200 dinner? What I mean? It's just everything is just so suburban, and my vision is progressive. However, it does fit. There you go, buddy. it does fit the constituency, right? And so you think about the layout and the demographics of the constituency in 2016. You think about the difference of the constituency in 2018. By the way, this seat was flipped in 2018. A Democrat sat in this seat just one cycle previous. Right. So this seat is absolutely flippable, but it is going to take conversations like this, right? And conversation, folks with that look like you and I, just to say go vote, just go vote.
Yeah. And I mean, when you're talking about the concert hall and you're talking about the minor league teams, Sugarland, that's the first thing that popped in my head, and it's not that far from us, and they have both.
Yeah. So they have Constellation Field, which is amazing. I went to the Diwali festival Saturday. Beautiful. They had 13,000 people packed out. Then they've got
Smart Financial.
I forgot the name of Smart Financial. And they're building a concert hall right now. I'm not sure if you saw that. They're breaking ground on a brand new state-of-the-art concert hall.
Yeah, that's why I said classical Sugarland.
Yeah.
Because I work over there. So but yeah, I mean, and even something like Constellation Field and Smart Financial, if we had something like Smart Financial, that would be great. I mean, I've been to lots of concerts and events there. And you can never think that people are not going to come because it's small, because they're always booked.
Exactly.
Booked. I saw Alicia Keys there. I saw Erykah Badu there. I mean, people do go
That's
there.
Right.
So.
That's right.
Yeah.
So just think, I don't want to give too much out, but my goal is to have a 132 day. So House History 132, which falls on or around May 12th.
Okay.
So the first thing I want to do is have a ticker tape parade and just have confetti falling for our state champions and our All-A honor roll and our National Honor Society and our folks that are in the arts, our folks who are tight in the business, just to celebrate how diverse. So again, you think about, for us as people of color, Black people, it's you got to go into downtown to celebrate MLK Day.
Yeah.
For the brothers and sisters in the Muslim community, they have to go into, either Sugarland, A-Leaf, downtown to celebrate Eid Mubarak. Right. So it's again, statistically, we know that we have the infrastructure and the population to support all the different cultures that make us unique.
Right.
And so it's just about taking that veil of oppression down and saying we are beautifully diverse I'll just say that as a community, we are beautifully diverse. And it's just time that our leadership reflect those values.
Yeah. And I think that's great. And I when I saw that you were running and you ran into Jasmine at the gym and she's like, girl, Cam is running for office. And when people say office, you he's trying to be the mayor. What is it? She's like, no, I don't think it's that far up. But so she told me to look you up on Facebook because you told her to go to Coach Cam. And then I had went and looked, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. That was the one thing I always loved about y'all was y'all have always been a squad. It's like the track squad has always been a squad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I still keep up with Kikoa. I still keep up with Slim.
Yeah.
Um, I spoke to Quante out of the blue about a month ago. I keep up with a handful of guys, but
Yeah.
like the women's track group, it was just like, just thick and thin.
Yeah. We
I always
are. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on to talk about all things politics. Hopefully I'm going to talk to Jasmine. Maybe we'll show up on Saturday, do some karaoke.
y'all better pull up. Y'all better
Yeah,
pull
now
up.
that I'm feeling better, I can actually get out and do things. So I'm excited about that. But any words that you want to say to everybody before we actually wrap up?
Yeah. So what I would say is, the folks who are watching, the folks who are listening, we know you're going to vote, right? You talk about like preaching to the choir. We know that the folks who are watching right now are the choir. What I would ask is not only for those who are watching to share this episode with someone, but take somebody out to the polls. And
Yeah.
the one thing that I would say in our community we have a very bad history of is like outthinking ourselves, right? And so what I would say simply is, your vote is so powerful. The person who I told you, Gina Kalani, won this seat in 2018 by 103 votes.
Wow.
103 votes, right? And so ultimately, what we know is the same way Big Mama had that Crown rollback under her mattress. You only hide things that are valuable.
Yeah.
And the fact that the GOP is hiding our vote and making it harder to vote and have eliminated 24-hour voting and have eliminated drive-through voting, like it's that should tell you something. They're hiding something that's valuable.
Yeah.
So use it.
Well, Cam, like I said, I know that you are going to be successful next month. And I am going to be there on Saturday.
Yeah,
we'll talk and figure out like how I can help you with this campaign now that I'm out and about.
Yeah.
So, we're gonna make this work.
We're gonna make it shake. We're gonna make it
all
shake
the way to the end.
We're gonna make 132 forever blue. That's the goal.
Hey, that sounds good to me. All right, Cam. Yeah. I appreciate you. And again, good luck.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
And that's a wrap on another amazing episode. I know that you were just as inspired as I was after listening to that conversation. And to let us know how we're doing, don't forget to leave us a review, like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also follow us on all social media platforms, from YouTube to Facebook, at The Color of Influence, and on Instagram, _color_of_influence. You can check out all of our episodes and additional content on our website, thecolorofinfluence.com, and that's an N only for influence. And don't forget to share the podcast with someone you know, and have them share the podcast with someone they know. Thank you all for listening. Until next time, peace out.